Today, we're trying something new on Short Circuit, and we're looking at the Leica M11. So Leica has updated the sensor in this camera. It is now 60 megapixels, backside illuminated, and you can actually use crop modes 1.3 and 1.8 while shooting. So if you don't want to see your entire image right off the bat, it'll crop in for you, and you don't have to do that in post, but you will still retain the entirety of your image. And it's one of those things where Leica wants you to experience as much in camera as possible, and the experience of using their cameras is the entire point of them. The body overall hasn't changed a ton from the M10. You've got the button, the custom button that was on the front of the camera is now on the top of the camera. One of the features I actually really love about this camera is each button on here, the scroll wheel, for example, is now a button, and then the custom button, if you hold them down, it actually brings up all the features that you can use this for. So for example, if I wanted to change my digital zoom with this dial, so I can press it once, there's the frame guides for 1.3, press it again, and there's the frame guides for 1.8. That's handy. And if I wanted to do something else, like change my shutter type, I'll press it one more time, and that brings me to the shutter menu. So mechanical and electronic, which is the first for a M camera. So this camera actually has electronic shutter. Unfortunately, you're probably going to still have rolling shutter issues like other cameras that have electronic shutter. The readout on this sensor probably isn't quite fast enough for super fast moving objects, but if you're shooting a subject that's fairly still and you want it to be quiet, now that's a situation where the electronic shutter on this camera might work to your benefit. On the top of the camera, the ISO dial goes down to 64, which is a significant improvement from 100 and 200 being technically the lowest settings that you can use on the M10. And 64 ISO is really gonna help for those really bright days where you just want that extra lower exposure to protect your highlights. The shutter speed max on this mechanically is 1/4000, but thanks to the electronic shutter, if you're shooting something that is a still image, it's actually 1/16,000, which I don't actually have on my M10. Quite an interesting experience using an electronic shutter. I've turned the electronic shutter on. I'm gonna switch it to auto, change my ISO to 64 and see how this performs. Wow, it actually is very strange to have the experience on a Leica, not hearing the shutter, because the shutter is such an integral part of the shooting experience. I think my favorite physical change on this camera is the fact that they made the battery plate, well, there is no battery plate. It is just now a single bottom plate that is all attached except for the battery that pops out. Doesn't fall out when you do that. One press and the battery comes out. Another addition to the hardware that I really appreciate when I first started using this about a week ago is the camera has 64 gigs built-in internal storage now. Finishing off the bottom of the camera, they actually added a Type-C port to the bottom as well. And it comes with a Type-C to Lightning cable, which you can use directly to your iPhone with the Leica Photos app, and you can transfer your photos to your iPhone directly. If you're curious, I'm using the 35mm 1.4 ASPH that Leica sent with the camera. If you like modern glass and a very clean look, this pairing would be very good. But this package together is about $15,000 US. So personally, I'd probably use a different lens. One nice thing, but also I have a couple gripes with it, is the touchscreen on this camera. It's nice that it has a touchscreen. So you can open your menu, click here, but then you can't do things like scroll through the menu. And if I try to click any of these settings, it doesn't work. It's kind of a weird implementation of a touchscreen menu. I still appreciate it because it has, you can like punch in to zoom, check change your focus point, or like check your focus. In the menu, we actually have in the DNG resolution, you can change it from 60, 36, or 18. So when you take an image at 36 megapixels, it will use the full 60 megapixel resolution, compress all the pixels down to 36 megapixels. So you're essentially taking your full resolution of the sensor and getting extra stop of dynamic range by using a lower resolution in the camera. This can also go down to 18 megapixels. So if you need both smaller file sizes for the photos, so you don't need to blow up your image or you don't want as much resolution, but you still want the performance of the sensor, you're giving up resolution that you didn't need for extra dynamic range and better noise performance. So Andy and I were very curious, since we both own different M cameras. I own an M10 and Andy owns an M9. How it compares to the M11. Wow, that is much louder already. Oh, the shutter is so much slower. And the display is horrible. This is the display I'm working with. I can't even tell if this photo is in focus on this thing. Okay, so we're gonna go back to the office now and compare the differences between these three photos and look at some photos that we've already taken on this camera. But before we do that, a word from our sponsor. Thanks Jackery for sponsoring today's video. Their Explorer 1500 portable power station has enough juice to keep all your devices powered and connected. Its huge 1500 watt hour capacity and 1800 watt output rate allows up to 7 devices plugged in simultaneously. Takes only 4 hours to recharge it up from 0 to 80%. Check out the Explorer 1500 at the link below and get 10% off with code LinusTechTips. So here's this first photo of Cloverdale Coin Laundry, and right off the bat you can tell the color is what I would expect from a Leica camera. It's not overly saturated. It has kind of a warmer tone, even though it's an overcast day in this shot. You could post this photo as it is. Like, you wouldn't really need to do that much editing if you didn't want to. And that's kind of the nice thing about cameras like this, and most cameras these days. You don't have to force yourself to do a bunch of editing that you don't want to do if you don't want to do it, because this camera produces an image that is good already. I actually have a previous edit from a couple of days ago, and I'm just gonna apply the settings from that. Man, I think that's one of your advantages with post on most Leica cameras, but particularly this one, is the color is so easy to work with in Lightroom. And I didn't really do anything that special with this photo, and it looks really good already. So Jono just asked what the file sizes on some of these photos are. They're about 17 megabytes each, which is doesn't sound like a lot, but it's one photo being that amount, and then you times that by 1,000, it'll add up. So this is that photo we took outside that was at 64 ISO, and dang, that is a clean image. The last thing I want to look at with these photos is the comparison that we did between the M9, the M10, and the M11. I know which ones are which, but just right off the bat, like, let's just take a look from left to right here. You can see how much more dynamic range is in the M11. The M10 and the M9 are right up against on the left in the shadows, whereas the M11 has that kind of nice gradient up, and you can see it in the photo itself. Like, if you look at this furniture barn building, the shadows look like they've been lifted in Lightroom, but that's just because the camera itself has that much more dynamic range. The sky in the M11 photo has like a cleaner roll off. On paper, it doesn't feel like a couple stops of dynamic range might be that big of a deal, but like in really harsh scenarios where the sun is like right behind the building and you're trying to get the sky and whatever is in shadow, you want the detail for both. That might be the difference between getting a good shot and not a good shot with the M10 and 11. So here's a bunch of photos I took with the M11 the 2 weeks that I had it. I mean, as you can see, it doesn't take that much editing because I didn't touch these that much to make the photos look pretty good in my opinion. And 60 megapixels is more than any M camera has ever had. And if you want that resolution to blow up your photos, or maybe you're doing commercial work and you want some fun stuff and you're using an M camera for commercial work, I don't know how common that is, but the resolution is there if you want it. And I think that this is a pretty good upgrade. So thank you guys for watching. If you guys want me to check out another camera that we've never featured on this channel, let me know in the comments down below, and please subscribe.